after nearly 2 years of being closed, Alton Towers has finally reopened 𝗙𝗂𝗋𝗄𝗃, the Legend of the Towers. What I consider, and many of us consider, to be one of the best dark rides in the UK. And also the best madhouse attraction in the world. Now, it just reopened yesterday. I went to go check it out, and, well, today I'm going to be talking a little bit about what they've done well, what they've done differently, and just my general opinion and what to expect when you go on the ride. Now, there will be spoilers ahead, but I will let you know before those spoilers happen, just in case you actually want to, experience the ride for yourself without ruining it in this video. Okay, so first off, what actually is 𝗙𝗃? Now, of course, this is a little bit of a spoiler, so right here, this is what time to skip to if you don't want to know what actually happens on the ride. But basically, 𝗙𝗃 is a 𝗂𝗀𝗃 madhouse attraction at Alton Towers. It opened all the way back now 24 years ago in the year 2000, and it features a very rich storyline based off of a real-life legend, which we'll talk about in just a second, but it also has a bunch of other stuff like 3 separate pre-shows and a really, really unique ride, which is, of course, the 𝗂𝗂𝗃 madhouse part of it. It gives you the illusion that you're rotating around, you're going upside down, when actually it's just the room that rotates, along with the actual train, which does slightly rotate, but not completely vertically or upside down. And just the general theming, the storyline, and the place that it is set, actually within the towers of Alton Towers, is just so smart. So let me put it this way, the new 𝗙𝗃 had, some big boots to fill. And well, that actually leads us on to yesterday when I visited the ride and checked out the new 𝗙𝗃. So here's what to expect without spoiling the ride. If you've already ridden the old 𝗙𝗃s, the new 𝗙𝗃s is absolutely incredible, and in my opinion, even better than the old one. However, it does lose a lot of the subtlety, it loses a lot of the nuance that I would say the old one had, in an attempt to make it a lot more dramatic, a lot more, movie-like in a way. The ending to the new ride is so much more cinematic and I'd say almost over the top compared to the old one. But as someone who does prefer that more cinematic, more, dramatic vibe that they're going for with the new ride, I personally do prefer it. And I think they've done a really good job of conveying, the story in a real dramatized way that I think the general public will really enjoy. Although there is some major problems with the new ride, which I'm really sad about, to be honest. And again, I'm not going to spoil anything right here, so I'm going to keep this very vague. And I will go more into some of the specific issues in the what to expect part in just a second. But some of the biggest problems with the new ride is just the fact that they've put lighting fixtures and stuff like that just everywhere where you can see it. They haven't even made an attempt to hide a lot of these lighting fixtures, especially in the actual ride part of the ride, the actual vault. The fog machines make so much noise that you can tell that they're puffing up smoke. If you've been on Nemesis Subterra, you'll know what I mean, where it's the hissing noise and you're like, okay, yeah, clearly something's going on. And just in general, they've not done a very good job of keeping you immersed in an experience rather than a ride. You can definitely tell that you're in a theme park. So it's not exactly Disney level where, you can't see speakers, they're well hidden, the lights, you just, you're immersed in this different land. You can definitely tell you're at a theme park. And then the other problem, which really breaks my heart, okay, this really sucks, is that a lot of the speakers have really been toned down. They're not as loud anymore, and especially in the Octagon, the final voice line, which I'm not going to say just to, not ruin it, it's a lot more toned down. That bass that, really shook the whole room, it's no longer there anymore. It's really turned down, and you really don't feel that vibration. You don't feel that bass like you used to on the old ride, which is a real shame, to be honest. That is one of my favorite parts of the ride, but I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in just a second. Other than that, something that they have done very well, though, is, like I said, just making it a lot more dramatic, making it a lot more palatable to a general audience. And I really love that the indoor queue is no longer really a queue. It's more of a holding place where you really are able to be more immersed without, thinking, well, I'm in a queue, and feeling like you're still queuing for the ride. And it means that the room doesn't fill up anywhere near as much. Obviously, you don't, have a bunch of people talking and stuff like that. You're more able to get properly immersed into the ride. And speaking of that as well, I love that they've also built a door and a bit of a wall between the actual Armoury where the first pre-show is, and of course the actual indoor queue. That is done very well and executed really nicely. I also love some of the lighting effects that have now been added onto the cinema as well. And I just really think they've done a great job of actually, making the ride look really cool, really nice lighting effects, some really just good technology around the place. But honestly, a lot of that is really subjective, and you'll have to give it a ride yourself to really decide on whether, or not you like those more dramatic sort of parts of the ride. But anyway, that's my personal opinion of the ride, but what can you actually expect on the ride? Now, if it wasn't clear by what I just said, this is going to have a bunch of spoilers right here. So once again, skip to this time that's up right here if you don't want any spoilers of the ride. Okay, now it's time to get a bit specific and get into some spoilers right here. So first of all, 𝗙𝗃 is actually located in the Alton Towers of Alton Towers, which, if you don't know, is this massive castle-like structure, which was actually home to the Talbot family and the 16th Earl of Shrewsbury, which this whole story of Hex is centered around. The main difference in terms of the queue, actually, you know, compared to the old Hex, is that the main part of the queue is now actually on the outside. That part is actually being used. Now, this queue line is not great. There's no speakers, really. There's no decoration. It's just some fences, some bushes, and a couple really poor-looking signposts. I'm not really a big fan of this outdoor queue. I don't think they've put any effort into really making it better than the old version, other than putting some new signage so, you know, they can, of course, add a fast pass onto the ride. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It is outside of the towers. They can't do too much with that, and it does kind of fit with the vibe, I guess, because the idea of the ride is that it is a bit of like an archived sort of space that you're going into, not really an actual ride, so it does sort of work. But after you've gone through the outdoor queue, you'll then go into the indoor queue. This space is absolutely beautiful. They've done an incredible job of the lighting. But other than the lighting, it is pretty much the exact same room. All the decorations are very similar, if not the exact same. Although they have very much been enhanced by the new lighting in that room, which just looks great. It looks so good. From there, after you walk through the queue, you are held in this room for about 30 seconds to 2 minutes, I think, roughly. But from there, the doors will be opened by a person that will bring you into the Armoury room, which is, of course, home of the first pre-show. Now, one of my big gripes right here with the new ride is that you are held in this Armoury room for about, I don't know, 30 seconds to like 3-4 minutes. Again, it depends on a lot of different things right here, but you are held in this room for a long time for literally no reason. I noticed a lot of guests who obviously weren't theme park enthusiasts literally was just standing up against the doors thinking that this was just a waiting room. They didn't even realize this was a pre-show because it really doesn't look like a pre-show. You don't really notice that it is a pre-show, and, well, sitting as you're just standing in an empty room with not much to look at other than, you know, the actual pre-show that hasn't started yet. It does feel like a bit of an awkward space, and it feels like you could just be in the indoor queue for a little longer and actually appreciate the queue line video more. But anyway, from there, of course, you go through the little pre-show where it actually explains, you know, the 16th Earl of Shrewsbury and the story behind the ride a bit. Then you get moved into the cinema, which starts pretty quickly, actually. So basically, this pre-show right here just has a bit of a video explaining kind of the backstory of the ride, the actual backstory of the myth as well, with the actual fallen tree and it being chained up, and then it goes through a little bit of folklore, with Charles Talbot actually going into a bit of a, you know, crazy state, trying to figure out how this logger's killed his family member and stuff like that. And then something that really does suck and is very different to the old Hex is that at the end of this pre-show, there's always an announcement. From the 5 or 6 times that I've rode it, I thought, you know, the first time it was just a problem with the ride. But there is an announcement every time saying that there's some weird, you know, disturbance and please stand there, don't move sort of thing, which is very weird. I don't know why they wouldn't just start the cinema scene like 10 seconds later, or again, just, you know, start the actual previous scene a little bit later. It feels a bit weird. And these voice lines also seem to be actually baked into the pre-show as well. And because you are just standing in silence after this announcement, you can actually hear some of the audio bleeding over from the next scene, which is obviously why you're waiting, because you're waiting for that to end. But anyway, other than that, this pre-show is pretty much the same, although there are 2 major things that we do need to talk about. First of all, the pre-show video has been completely updated with a nice HD, or at least it looks HD pre-show, which if you rode the old one and you're a theme park enthusiast, you will have probably noted it was quite low quality, the old one. Something like 144p. It was literally like, you know, super low quality because it was produced all the way back in the year 2000. So it wasn't very high quality. They've actually gone through and remastered it, which looks great. One thing just to note, though, is that I'm not sure if this is correct, if my mind's playing tricks on me, but I feel like the audio ducking and just the overall mixing of the audio has been changed, and not brilliantly. I noticed that the music dips a lot lower when the actual narrator is talking, and then when he stops talking, it really ramps up very quickly from very quiet to loud. But other than that, it's incredible to see just the amount of detail you get in that pre-show now. And the very final thing is that they've actually added some lights that go off with the lightning in the video. I did seem to notice that, you know, this was sometimes a little bit mistimed, and the lights would go off when there's no lightning, which is a bit weird. But other than that, the cinema is an overall improvement, and they've done a really good job with it. And then the next room you go into is the Octagon room, where I'd say the biggest pre-show of the ride happens, with a bunch of actual physical elements rather than just, you know, a light on a portrait and, you know, an actual, well, video. There's a bunch of actual visual effects that go on in here, including, you know, of course, the actual sparks from the generator, which are a little over the top now. But again, that leans into the more theatrical side of stuff, so I don't really mind, even though I would personally have it turned down a bit. But in this room, it continues to explain the story a little bit more, and then we, you know, of course, get interrupted a little bit by the old witch who, or, well, the old beggar, who is not very happy, and she makes some evil noises, some things go on, some lights happen, and yeah. You obviously still have the effects of the actual witch, even though I would say she's a little bit more noticeable, you know, because of the new lighting, even before the actual part where we're supposed to be looking at her. We still have the wind effect from the drapes on the opposite side and stuff like that, and overall, I'd say this room is still really good, other than one major thing. And well, I already touched on this before, and that's, of course, the speakers just don't have the bass anymore. Absolutely adored how in the old ride, you had the actual narrator who was a very trustworthy, just kind of passive person, almost just like a storyteller, but then in the end of this pre-show, he almost turns, you know, into some otherworldly, you know, evil person with a much deeper, bassier voice, and you really lose that effect now, and it means that you're not as hyped, I'd say, for the actual next room. But anyway, moving on from the Octagon room right here, you then go into a bit of a walkway, a bit of a corridor, which all looks pretty similar to how it did before. Maybe there's some small lighting changes, but honestly, nothing that I really noticed too much. And then from there, of course, you go into the actual ride right here, the actual 𝗙𝗀𝗀𝗃𝗀 Madhouse, which looks absolutely incredible. And I honestly could make an entire video about how this looks right here, so I'm not going to go too into depth. But what I will say is that it is kind of very different to the old one. I mean, I'm pretty sure the sequence is the exact same, but a lot of the lighting cues and just sequence of how things happen with the actual lighting, you know, not the ride, but just the lighting and stuff that happens feels a lot different to the old one. And I personally prefer it, although I think, you know, like I said before, it's a lot more theatrical, it's a lot more over the top. It's maybe not for everyone, but I really, really like how it looks. But other than the lighting and maybe some of the sounding places, it is very, very similar looking in terms of the actual decorations and stuff. I do think that they've added some decorations in places, they've changed some stuff like that, but it's mostly the same looking. There is one thing that I do just want to talk about with the actual sequence of the ride right here, which is amazing. I mean, I love this part. Is the actual finale now feels so much more like a finale than before. I feel like something that Madhouse has really struggled with, you know, with the ones that I've been on so far, is that they really struggle to have a good finale that really feels like it pays off. And don't worry, guys, that is not the case right here, because 𝗙𝗃𝗃's finale is incredible. Of course, you've got the actual tree where he looks very evil and is like, oh no. But then now they've added this projector which puts a bunch of, like, I think stars or just like magic little bits. I don't know how to explain it, but that looks absolutely incredible. And then obviously the ride then goes back to normal, and then you have like the twinkly noise sort of effect that they have at the end of the soundtrack, which then just turns on to the actual beat of the song right here, which just, oh, it looks so incredible, and it is such a great finale to the ride. I absolutely love it, honestly. It looks amazing, although it's not all positives, because of course it's not. It's Merlin, so they've ruined some stuff. One major thing that I really, really don't like in here is the fact that you could see every single light fixture on planet Earth. I feel like this is probably due for the cost at this point, though, because it's Merlin, you know, they really just don't care about hiding speakers and lighting, you know, they just put it in plain sight, which again takes you out of it, as I was speaking about before, but it is what it is, I guess. But being able to see just the lighting fixtures and actually hear the smoke machine as well, like you can hear the noise of it turning on, which kind of sucks. But anyway, after you come out of there, of course, it's pretty much the exact same from there. You just go through the exit. Although I will say it is a little bit different how you exit. You no longer exit through Her Ladyship's gardens. You actually exit next to the 𝗙𝗃𝗃𝗀𝗃 land cars, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. Because instead of actually having a nice area to exit through, you just exit next to like a wooden fence. So yeah, not brilliant. But you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's literally an exit path. Who cares, really? But anyway, let me just wrap this review up right here by just talking in an overall sense. I personally absolutely love the new 𝗙𝗃s, and I think a majority of people will really love it. I'd say people that are really die-hard 𝗙𝗃s fans and liked a lot of that subtlety and, you know, nuance and just kind of the realism of it, I think they will not like this new 𝗙𝗃s. Definitely not. It's a lot more dramatic, and it doesn't go anywhere near down that path of being very, you know, subtle. But I personally think that a lot of people, you know, the majority of people will really, really prefer the new ride, or at least like it just a little bit more. There is definitely some stuff that they could improve upon. Obviously, you know, hiding the lighting and actually making those speakers more basic. The outdoor cues also just a bit of a miss, but I still think it is an incredible ride. And whether it's the best dark ride in the UK, well, I think that's up to you. Although instead of there only being 2 different contenders right here with Valhalla and 𝗙𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, I'd say there's now 3. And personally, I think it may be better than 𝗙𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, but I don't know really. I need to ride it more to kind of get that idea, I'd say. But anyway, with all that said, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this video right here. This is a brand new channel, something very different that I'm trying from my actual other channel. So if you have enjoyed it and you want to see more like this, I would really, really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, and of course give the video a like too. And well, other than that, bye.